Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. Alright, well hi friends, welcome to kind of a unique video that I'm looking to do. Maybe I'll make this a series, maybe not, I don't know. But number one, I've been wanting to talk more about historicals lately, but I didn't necessarily feel like doing a trope video for it. So I decided to just make up a way to talk about them. So what I'm planning to do today is, as the title says, I'm going to go through the last 10 historicals that I read. There is two little caveats. One, it'll be, well, no, there's just one caveat. It is books I read for the first time, the last 10, because I do a lot of historical rereading. So in the last 10 that I read, 5 of them were, so I'm obviously not going to go over those ones because they're ones I've talked about ad nauseum on my channel. They're going to be the last 10 new books that I read to me. So yeah, we're going to go through these, and I'm not going to talk like too deeply about them, but just maybe, you know, fall's here, winter's coming, I get in a historical mood now. They're my cozy books to read. And also, I just haven't talked about historicals in their own videos lately, because, I mean, I'll be honest, they don't always do that well, but I know that some of you first found me because of my historical things. You love when I talk about historical romance, so this video is for you. And if you've never tried a historical, maybe see which of these sound interesting to you to give them a go, because I think historical romance can be just such a nice thing to read sometimes. You know, they can have just as much angst, just as much steam. Some of these I'll tell you when the ones that they have just as much steam as anything else, okay? And some of them are a little bit lighter, which is nice sometimes. So let's go through these. The most recent historical that I read was The Duke Who Knew Too Much by Grace Calloway. This is actually the start of the Heart of Inquiry, which is a spin-off series for Grace Calloway. Before that, there was the Scandal of Mayfair, or Mayhem in Mayfair. Now I need to check. Mayhem in Mayfair series. But you can start with this one if you'd like. And this one is about Alaric, who's the Duke of Strathaven, and he's known as the Devil's Duke. And he is tormented by his past, and he ends up getting accused of murder of his mistress when he wakes up beside her dead body. Then there's Emma Kent, she is an independent country miss, and she believes that the Duke did this. And so she actually is one of the people who accuses him because she'd seen him being shady with this woman recently. Actually, they were engaging in some BDSM, but she didn't understand what it was she came upon. And the woman, the mistress, was afraid of like explaining herself because she didn't want to be like shamed for doing this. So when this woman turns up dead, Emma is like, he did it. I saw him hurting her. He did it. And very quickly she is proved wrong, and now she plans to go about helping him solve the murder of this woman. So yeah, I enjoyed this quite a bit. I liked how they do have this very, like, this is almost an enemies to lovers because she's accusing him of murder. There's already a lot of scandal surrounding him, and so for her to do this, he's like, you need to stop. Like, I didn't kill her. And she's like, you can't prove to me that you didn't, like that kind of thing. And eventually he does prove by explaining BDSM to her, and him explaining like, she wanted me to do that. I didn't kill her. We have things called safe words and stuff like that. So anyway, but then it turns into, he begins to fall in love with her. Of course, he doesn't think he's falling in love. And you know, that may now be putting her in the crosshairs of whoever wants to hurt him. So there we go. All right, then we have Some Winter's Evening by Erin Langston. Erin Langston is an author who has become a new favorite of mine. I've read the 2 books she has out so far. Well, she actually has a 3rd that I haven't read, but I own it. I'm planning to read it this winter. But her book that started it all for me was Forever Your Rogue, which is in my top books of the year, for sure. And this one is a, like, little sequel novel. It's going to take place between books 1 and 2, and this one is about the heroine from the first one's brother and then the new governess for the family, and they meet at an inn on like Christmas Eve, and then they have this like almost moment together, which doesn't end up happening, and then the next day, they run into each other at the manor where she's supposed to work and he's staying for the Christmas holiday. So a little bit awkward for everybody, but this one has a hero who's a bit of a bookish hero. He has glasses, he's a lawyer, and she is a woman who life has been hard for her. And though she is having feelings for him, she likes him, she's in a precarious position and she really can't risk it with a fling. So it could get a bit sticky for her, you know. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I gave this one 5 stars, and there isn't of course there isn't a ton of spice going on in this one, but it was very sweet. And if you're someone who likes Christmas novellas, this was very good. And it's a longer kind of novella, I think. Is it? Actually, I don't know how many pages it is, but it was a decent size one. So it's not like it's just a quick slip. Like, it has a little bit of meat to it too. All right, then there was Despising the Duke by Stevie Sparks. This one I need to pull up because it's been a little bit. So this one is book 2 in a series. What is this series supposed to be called? What is it? Lords of Desire. Sorry, it's written really tiny. So this one is a second chance romance. And this one takes place in it's called like in the middle of the wars, basically. So it takes place between World War I and World War II, which is an interesting time. So you see by the heroine, she's wearing a flapper dress in this. And in this we have Kit, the Duke of Asselborn, and he has like been living a tough life. He's an explorer. He's a, you know, a ne'er-do-well, what people think. And he broke Annabelle's heart 16 years ago when she found herself in the family way. He told her, "I'm still going on my adventure." Supposedly, that's what he said. So she ends up having to marry someone else, but all he ends up hearing is that she married someone else. So he thinks that this woman who he asked to wait for him didn't, and she thinks the man that she wanted to be with left her and ran away. So there's a lot of miscommunication that starts this, but it isn't miscommunication just on their own. Like, there is someone who did this, right? Like, I'll just put that out there to help you out. But 16 years later, they hate each other because of this. They are broken people, sad people, and they get a second chance. And this is a painful story. This one's very angsty, but there is also a lot of like spice there is spice. There is like a bit of like sexual healing going on in this, and I really like that. I really like that. You are going to hate both of these characters for a % of this book because they both just seem so stubborn, and you're like, you guys are the worst. And then there's a turn where it just all gets laid out, and then you just are like, I hope you guys can work through this because I love you so much. So this isn't an easy book. I'm not saying it is, but I think it's a very rewarding story if you make it all the way through. All right, then there was To Tempt a Scandalous Lord by Liana de la Rosa. This is book 4 in the Once Upon a Scandal series. So maybe not the best to start this one, but since we're going through the last 10, there's this. The first one in the series, let me peek, because I don't remember. Oh, of course it's not going to say. Why can't you just say what the first book is? Oh, here we go. To Love a Scandalous Duke or To Tame a Scandalous Lady. I don't know. Whatever. Those are the books. Liana de la Rosa. This is the first series by her that I've read. She now has a traditionally published deal, so she is writing for them. She writes some very diverse characters. I really like how unique her stories are. So this one is about Alicia Lindsay, and so she's a dowager countess. She had a pretty abusive husband to start, but now she is free. She's a dowager countess. She can do what she wants. And she ends up meeting the hard-headed Lord Inverray, who is the older brother of some of her friends at the ton. And so she gets invited to dinner with them a lot, and so she meets him. And he is in Parliament. He's hoping to become Prime Minister. And so secretly, our heroine actually writes for a political paper, and she has been critiquing the hero's work in this paper. So when they have dinner one day, they end up talking politics, and she puts a few of her ideas out there. And number one, he's shocked that she's so well educated on some of these ideas, and also that she might be right about some of her ideas. I know, absolutely shocking, right? But anyway, they do have this attraction. There's a chemistry, but they both are like, it couldn't work between us. But then they end up dancing together at a ball, and her dress, which this is cute because she provided a little picture with it, her dress gets caught on something on the front of his jacket, and it ends up ripping the front of her dress. So they immediately have to get engaged, and now they are married and together, and he doesn't want to be distracted by anything. So now they're in this place where, like, now they're married and he's ignoring her. So it's going to be difficult, but there is some caretaking in here. Also, our hero is a philanthropist in some ways. Like, he has an orphanage that him and his sisters all help at, and the heroine, like, really likes that about him. So there's some really beautiful moments in here, but they definitely are a pair that are just like, stop butting heads and work together. Also, all of these audiobooks can be found on AnyPlay if you have that service. So that's how I listened to them all, was on AnyPlay. All right, then we had one that I didn't like very much, but we're doing the last 10. So this one was called The Harlot by Saskia Walker. And again, was not a fan of this one really by any means. This one was set in almost a medieval time, kind of, not quite. And it was a Highlander romance, and her heroine is a harlot. She is a strumpet. And she's also being accused of witchcraft. Now, in this book, she does think that she's a witch, too. So she's not doing a very good job of hiding it. And so she's getting accused of this, and she might get killed. Our hero ends up rescuing her from being killed, but wants to use her for his own purposes because he needs someone to be a spy for him with his enemy. And so that is his trade, as he saves her from being killed, but he wants her to help him with this mission that he has. The only thing is, this mission involves seducing and being sexually available to the enemy that he's going to take her to. And things are going to get interesting because they involve sex lessons, but it was weird sex lessons, and a lot of it, he like forced her into it. And then again, is she a witch? Isn't she? She believes she's a witch. And I just didn't understand what was going on with this one. And the hero was so mean the whole time. And it was just, I felt icky when I was reading it. And so yeah, I gave this one 2 stars, and I wasn't a fan of it. So I don't plan on finishing the series by any means, but I gave it a go. So there we go. I gave it a go. What can you say? All right, then I read Stacy Reid, who she will show up on this list again because I was in a Stacy Reid mood. This is The Irresistible Miss Pwell, and this is book 2 in the Scandalous House of Leiden, but it's also kind of like a companion to book 1, which is like a novella that's called The Duke's Shotgun Wedding. And this one is about Philippa Pwell and the Lord Anthony. So he ends up falling for Philippa, but the issue is that his family just found out that he was actually a bastard, and he was supposed to be his brother's heir, so his heir wasn't planning on marrying anyone. But that's what the first book is about, is the Duke now doesn't have an heir anymore, so he has to get married and make one. But also the hero's falling for the heroine, and her family isn't going to let her marry a bastard. So they're in an awkward position. So I had a pretty fun time with this one. This is another one I listened to on AnyPlay. There's a lot of historicals you can find there. It's not the best Stacy Reid, but this is one of her older ones, and it's not very long. So this series is one I've been trying to make my way through when I have the time. All right, then I read, this one I have to pull up too. Then I read A Dangerous Proposal by Gillian Eaton. This was number 2 in the Bow Street Brides. And this was one that I had gotten free on one of the Stuff Your Kindle days. So even though it was book 2 in a series, I started with this one. And this one was actually a very low steam book, by the way. It only had like one or two scenes, and they weren't closed door, but they were very like undescriptive, we'll say. But this one actually has Felicity Atwood, and she has two beautiful children when her husband publicly leaves her for his mistress. And now she's a divorcee, and he didn't leave her with anything. So now she's living in, you know, just a small place. She needs to find work and help for her children, and she's in a rough spot. Also, like, she's just had a really tough life. I don't know what else to say. Then there's Felix Spencer, who is a thief, but now he works for Bow Street, and he's very enamored with her, so he wants to court her. He wants to be there for her, and she doesn't want anything to do with men. So she's very resistant to all the nice things he wants to do for her, but when her children really start to like him, you know how it goes. So Felix wants to prove that he's worthy of having her, and so he's going to do what he has to do to prove that. So I thought this one was very charming. It was very sweet, but there are some trigger warnings for this one, that she was assaulted, and that's kind of what led to the end of her marriage, so we'll put that out there. But yeah, this one was 4 stars for me, but like I said, it was a 1 on the spice scale, but this one had a really beautiful relationship between these two, and of a very patient and devoted hero. So if those are things you love, I think you should give this one a try. I definitely want to try more by this author because it was very well done. All right, then we had one of my favorite authors released a new book, and it was Selena by Minerva Spencer, aka SM La Violette. And this is book 3 in the Bellamy sisters, which I have loved this series so much. It's been wonderful. And so this one is about Selena, who's considered the most beautiful Bellamy sister, and she's the one that for this series, like at the beginning of the series, was the one that the family thought they had the best chance of getting a good match with because she was so beautiful. And so she gets sent to London with her sister and, like, I think it's the aunt or whatever, and she's supposed to get a good match. Now, after some stuff that happened in books 1 and 2, she doesn't necessarily need to get a good match because both of her sisters have married one was a duke and one is a wealthy businessman who is untitled but is super rich. So her family is good. Her brother's schooling is paid for. Her sisters will have dowries. Like, she's good. And so when she finds out, well, she does actually get kidnapped in the beginning by her sister's new nephew-in-law, who is a very beautiful man, but she's a bit too trusting and gets in his curl with him, and then he's going to take her to Scotland to either ransom her or marry her and get her money that way. But she ends up getting away from him, as well as another man who comes to rescue her, who she's just like, this is stupid. And so she makes a run for it because she steals their coats, which have their money in it. And she's like, whatever, I'm going to go on an adventure because I'm sick of only being seen as the pretty one. And I'm sick of, like, people trying to order me around and think I'm stupid. So she goes. Then she makes it to a little town where at an inn there is a butler who's trying to find a new housekeeper because his boss keeps firing them and no one can handle it. And Selena gets a bit too big for her britches and decides that she's run the household, kind of. She can keep a household in order, maybe. Let me take this job. Let me just do this. Let me be useful for once. Let me do this job. So she gets the job at this housekeeper. Nobody really believes that she is a young widow or whatever she pretends to be. But the thing is, the owner of this house, the one who's so grumpy that he's scared away other housekeepers, he's blind. And so he can't see that she's the most beautiful woman in the country or whatever. And he just knows that there's this bossy chit who's trying to get him to have an easier life and make sure he's fed and taken care of. And he just wants to be left alone to his misery because he lost his wife and unborn child in a carriage accident, the same accident that left him blind and injured, and he just wants nothing to do with it. But Selena won't give up, and she makes him a deal that if by the end of, I think it's by the end of the month, or is it only 2 weeks? I don't even know. If he doesn't want her to stay by then, she'll happily leave. Now, Selena doesn't have to have this job. She could go home at any time, but she wants the challenge. So she takes it. And I love a good employer-employee romance. I'm not going to lie, especially like a housekeeper and a lord. Like, I've read quite a few of those lately, by the way. So yeah, I highly recommend. I, of course, think you should start with Phoebe and read them all, but you could get away with just reading this one if you like what I've described, and then you could go back and read the others if you want. It's going to be a while before book 4 comes out, so you have some time, but this was a 5-star read for me, and this one actually is a lower steam one. I think this one was only 2, but usually Minerva Spencer, she writes some higher spice historicals, but she also writes such unique stories. I loved that about that one for sure. All right, just 2 more left. So we have another Stacy read now. There was an Earl to Remember, and this one was her most recent release. This is book 2 in the Unforgettable Love series, but they're not really connected, so you can read this one first, or you can read A Matter of, what is that one even called? I don't know, but whatever, the first one in this. And this one, I wasn't the biggest fan of. It was an arc, so I did rate it favorably, but this one is supposed to be kind of the reimagining of Overboard. And I just ain't too much of a fan of that scenario as a real romance, because we have this snotty lord and this woman who is a chef, and she has a job on his yacht, and then when his mistress doesn't like something that she's done, she ends up getting fired. And so she has to leave without pay, basically, after she did all this work to make all this food. Then he ends up falling overboard or getting pushed overboard of his yacht, and he wakes up on the beach of land that is like where the heroine lives. And so when she realizes, he doesn't remember who she is, but he recognizes her, and he's like, I was in bed with you, wasn't I? And he starts like saying all these things that like aren't true. Like, he had seen her and talked with her, and he had accidentally kissed her, but he had not taken off her clothes or done any of that. But he starts spouting this. The only way to save her reputation is to say that they are like engaged, or maybe they're already married. I can't remember, but pretends that that's what it is. And so now they have to fake this relationship and hope that he doesn't remember who he is. Who knows? So I just wasn't a huge fan. I'm never a huge fan of the like lying to the person, even if they were a jerk. It's like you took him from his whole life. So it was a bit of a miss for me. And sadly, to end my 10 here, there was another one that I did find fascinating, because I always find this author fascinating, but it's one of my least favorite by this author, so there's that. This one was Somewhere I'll Find You by Lisa Kleypas, and this one is a part of the Capitol Theater duet. And I mean, I always am intrigued by Lisa Kleypas, even the ones that aren't my favorite. But this one is about Julia Wentworth, and she is an actress, and she's working at the Capitol Theater, and she actually is engaged to Damon Savage, but she ran away when when she had a disagreement with her family. But her and Damon have been promised to each other, and he wants to make sure that that is officially like ended, so that he can go ahead and marry somebody else and start having heirs and everything. And they knew each other when they were younger. They've been betrothed since they were children, but they never really like got along too well. Now, when Damon runs into her as this actress, she's actually like wearing a mask, and so she knows who he is, but he doesn't know who she is, and he becomes really intrigued by her. And he happens to be in London to find his errant fiance so that he can dissolve the betrothal. But he starts to become interested in this actress and doesn't realize they're the same person. So, and then, of course, once he finds out, he might not want to dissolve this betrothal like he did. So, yeah, it was a really unique story. I liked that there was a theater troupe. I, of course, was very intrigued by the owner of this theater and his romances in book 2. I'm definitely going to read that one because that guy is fascinating. Like, he's really interesting. So I want to read his story for sure. So yeah, there we go. Those are the last 10 historicals that I read. Some good, some not, some I highly recommend, some that were just eh. But yeah, tell me some of the last few historicals you read. Maybe there's some recommendations that I can take. And yeah, if you love historicals, make sure you like this video, leave a comment, leave an emoji down below, because again, my historical videos tend not to do great, but I want to make more of them because I know they are beloved. So if you can help this video out in any way, that'd be great. Also, if you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, I have links to my Patreon, my channel memberships, and all those if you're interested. And yeah, that's a wrap for this video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.